Every time I think about all the devices that I need to secure, I get a little antsy. But I've heard about this new endpoint security I should be looking into. To find out more, stay tuned.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello everyone, I'm glad you could make it back for more GSEC, and we're going to be talking about endpoint security. And you know what? That's one of those words where I use the word endpoint a little bit differently than I think this is. So Daniel, can you just give us a broad kind of definition of what endpoint security is?
Yeah, always a good place to start is to define our terms so that the conversation that we're having is, we don't talk past each other, right? Because like you said, you may have a different idea of what endpoint means. You might have a different idea of what security means, and you stick the two together, you get really wacky. But what we mean by endpoint security is that you have endpoint nodes. You have ends to your network. These are typically things like laptops, desktops, mobile devices, right? It can go into other places as well, but those are the main devices that we mean when we say an endpoint device, right? So when we start talking about endpoint security, it's how can we protect those devices, because they're in the hands of users that might not be as technically savvy as our security team or our IT people or maybe our development crew, because they work with technology, they understand it a little bit more. But that doesn't mean that other people aren't engaging in technology, just maybe not at the level that we're used to. So we have to be able to help them stay out of the bushes, stay out of the woods, right? And be safe as they traverse their way around this world and the lovely, lovely internet. A couple of things that this does, usually when we talk about endpoint security, you're probably thinking antivirus or any malware, which is true. Yes, that is part of endpoint security. You'll notice I qualified that with the word part. It is a subset of endpoint security. Think of endpoint security as an umbrella term, right? And underneath that, we have things like antivirus and anti-malware. We have things like DLP. We have things like encryptions, or what else can we do with this? Maybe network access control or whitelisting, right? All great things that you put it underneath that umbrella. Now, when you have it under that umbrella in one package, now you're talking true endpoint security. That's a lot of times you can purchase software that does endpoint security, and it will encompass a lot, if not all or more of those things, right? So that's what we're talking about when we say endpoint security. Hopefully that gives you a better idea. So Justin, we're all on the same page. I hope that clears up for you.
That makes a little more sense. Now, sometimes when I hear things like this, you said software, but could this also be like a hardware, like a dedicated hardware piece, or is it typically like I'm going to provision this appliance with a suite of software on it?
Yeah, you can get appliances as well. We are talking, centralized management is one of the big parts of a true endpoint security platform, is that you're able to, as an administrator, a security personnel, sit at an endpoint, right? And administer all those things. I can look at, let's say I've connected Justin's computer and his mobile phone. I've got Bobby over here, got his computer, his mobile phone, Sally, so on and so forth. I got 10 different users. If I had to go and, make sure you're getting your updates and do that, and I had to do that for each one, which is the normal practice of individuals, where they purchase something that's helping them secure their computer, does anti-malware, maybe some firewalling, some things like that. That's what they have to do, because they only have to worry about that one device or work with them individually if they have multiple devices. Whereas if we work in a corporate environment, we need a little bit easier access into these systems. So you'll have an appliance or a server that you stand up, install the management software, and from which you can do things like deploy agents that will check in, updates, check out statuses, things of that nature, to give you, as the administrator, much better insights into the myriad of devices that are throughout your network. So with endpoint security, you typically have that centralized management either through an appliance that they give you, that you purchase, or you lease or rent. Maybe it's cloud-based. It could be agentless, or use an agent to do this. There's many, many different ways. Just go to RSA one year, and you will be inundated with endpoint security platforms that work in a variety of different ways. So you pick your poison, something that goes well with your environment. gives you that good centralized management, works well for your staff, gives them that insight that they need, dashboards, reports, all other great stuff, and then you're good to go.
Speaking of which, deploying large
Yeah.
organization, many devices. So when I think of that, I go, oh, well, there's probably multiple platforms like Windows and maybe some Linux boxes. Those heterogeneous environments sometimes present some interesting problems, but typically these solutions are going to have something that unify those together. Like, for instance, maybe for firewalls or something like that.
Yeah, definitely, right? So it could give you, like I said before, that centralized management to deploy firewalls. But we all have firewalls on our system, and that could just be, maybe you have a multiple, like, I'm not going to buy one solution to try to do endpoint protection. I'm just going to cobble something together. The good news is that there are plenty of pieces out there for us to play with that gives us these accesses. Like if I'm in my Linux machine, right? In here, I could jump in and do something like IP tables, which is a firewall system, also known more commonly now as the Universal Firewall, or UFW, right? Yeah, Universal Firewall. Yeah, UFW. And that will give you the ability to create access control lists on what kind of network connectivity is allowed or disallowed to your computer. If I do an IP tables dash, I think it's just lowercase l. No, it doesn't love that one. I think it must be capital L then. There you go. And it's listing the different policies that are available on this Linux machine. And you'll notice that right here, it's saying chain input, which means that any incoming traffic, what should I do with it? Well, by its policy, it's accepting all incoming traffic. If there were rules applied, they would be right here and let you know what is being blacklisted, what is not being allowed. And then if it didn't meet any of those criteria, then it would hit the default, which is to accept it, okay? You also have forward. What do I want to do with it if it's asking me to move it to something else? What should I do with it? Well, maybe I should forward it. And you'll notice policy is to, by default, accept. And of course, the output changes would be our egress, when things need to go out from our machine to maybe reply back. What should I do with it? And the default here is accept. Now, you can do an implicit accept if that is your cup of tea. That's totally fine. A lot of people will suggest doing an implicit deny, which means change all those policies to deny and only like whitelist things. Make sure that, because it's easier to go, I know I want this to happen, but I don't know about stuff that I don't know about, right? Blind spots are blind spots because we don't know what they are. So it could be easier to go with that implicit deny and just whitelist the applications that you know need access to things. And that's inside of Linux. Other different ones is just what comes kind of stock in trade. If you jump over to Windows, we've got a Windows box right here. Let's get logged into that. What's my password? If I can remember it. There we go. You can go into the control panel and find Windows Firewall. Most Windows operating systems also have a search feature. And you'll notice that here's kind of the same thing. Here's the policy and what's going on. And you'll notice right here that I'm getting all these red X's. And that's because the firewall is not turned on at this point. I wanted to show you. If you log into your Windows machine and you see that this is the case, that is probably not what you wanted. Now, you may have done it purposefully. I've done it purposefully to show you, if you see all this red, it's letting you know that the firewall is turned off. You can see that right there. Turn off firewalls. Not recommended, right? Not recommended. And of course, this applies to all the domain networks, public networks, and private networks that you might be connected to. So I can change that depending on what type of network I'm connected to as far as Windows is concerned. So I turned all those off so you could see that, and I could just turn those back on, but it is showing you here. If you need to go there, that's right over here on the left-hand side. It says turn Windows Firewall on or off. We also have this advanced settings area right there, which is going to give you much more fine control over this. Click that. It opens up the Windows Firewall with advanced security. I'll just full screen that. And then, of course, on the left-hand side, we just have the tree and then the view, I guess. If I hit inbound rules, again, what's coming in, what should I do with it? We have all these different rules. You can set it for port or different types of protocol or the software application that's trying to use that. It is what we call a host-based firewall. It does a great job of that. You can definitely get pretty granular in here, set custom rules up, just like you can with IP tables. Set all your custom rules until the cows come home. It's a lot of hard work. Justin probably break out in a cold sweat as soon as I say IP tables. He's going down.
Every time I hear IP tag, I go, but I need access to that machine, and I keep locking myself out.
Yeah, it is a good way to hose yourself up. So be careful when setting those rules.
Now, as far as these host-based firewalls, great to have them. Definitely use them. UFW provides a better interface for the Linux boxes than IP tables does.
Yeah. I'm just old school. I've just always IP tabled it. So.
Understandable. I need help. But there are times where things can still go awry, right?
Yeah.
The endpoint security a lot of times has like an intrusion detection system built into it, right?
Yeah.
Is that true across the board, or is it like you got to pick that option?
I'm gonna hedge my bets and say absolutely, positively, maybe.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. I can't say that it's true across the board. You'll probably see that as a very common thing is HIDs and HIPs, right? These are host-based intrusion detection systems and host-based intrusion prevention systems. Difference we need to know between the two is that one is what we would call passive, and what that means is it is looking for signatures, things that it knows to be a little shady as far as practice goes, or you've set up a rule, you've created your own custom signature, whatever the case is. If that event occurs, you get an alert. So you set up your rules and your alerts, and there you go. You get that alert. This is what used to confuse me a lot was we call that passive. I thought, well, that seems like an active thing. It is actively looking for these problems, and then it is actively sending me an alert when those problems occur, and it has detected. But it doesn't do anything other than that. So because we have also intrusion prevention systems, which actually stops the malicious activity. It will cut off the channel and say, nope, I know this to be bad, or the head honcho here has decided that that is not something we are going to engage in, so I'm just going to cut that off, and we're not going to do that anymore. That's what we would call active in intrusion prevention system, right? So intrusion detection is passive because all it does is alert you. Intrusion prevention is active because what it does is actually stop the attack and alert you, right? So it typically does both roles. I have thought, well, you know what? I'll grab something off the interwebs and show you what a host-based, like a management system could look like. I found the OSSEC, the OSEC appliance that I just downloaded. It's a virtual machine, so throw it in VirtualBox or whatever. I'll try to make a note for myself to add that link to get that in our learner resources. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's the appliance. It's running CentOS. See if I can get logged in. There you go. I've already got the dashboard up and running for us. We have a couple of things going on. It's showing us top alerts per agent. Of course, so this is an agent-based host intrusion detection system. And so I can deploy these agents out. I can come here, see how they're checking in. Is there any kind of thing I need to be worried about? Come down here and I can see the OSEC alerts data right there. And of course, what time it happened, what the agent was, what rule it hit, the alert level. So depending on how you have it set up, I don't know if they're going from ascending or descending. But then, of course, the description, an unknown problem somewhere in the system, that's descriptive. A little bit of details in here. It's saying that Firefox.desktop, full message, type error, network, and I guess you can hit this filter for value. Shows you where the actual error log is being stored. So this one is in var/log/messages, what host received it or generated it, and then the syslog program, which is OSEC. So a lot of good information. Of course, you can set up all your own custom stuff, get a little more granular, figure out what it is. And of course, these things typically will also be learning, trying to figure out what is normal traffic, what is normal activity. And then anytime it sees something out of the norm, it can alert you. A lot of them will do that type of stuff. Got some dev tools and some management tools. Timeline, I'm not familiar with what timeline is. I'm guessing, well, I guess we can click on it and see what it does. Come on, Kibana, you can do it. Once it goes. All right, so just basically how long it's been up, kind of uptime, activity. Are we seeing spikes? So we can get those baselines, figure out what's normal, what's abnormal. If I keep the system up and running, I get some agents out there, and I can start seeing when I see dips in traffic and activity and spikes in traffic and activity, and then I see a spike during a normal dip or a trough, then I'm probably going to want to investigate that and see what's going on. So it can be super helpful. Visualizations, not 100% on what that, like I said, I just grabbed this, spun it up, figured we'd take a look and see what it'll do. Alerts over time, top alerts per agent. So if I see that Justin's constantly in the top alerts, I need to go have a conversation with him and say, what kind of activities are you engaging in that's causing these things? Let's see if we can't bring that down to a minimum. And it's not to get on his case and chide him. He's just an end user. We just need to figure out why that's happening so that we can reduce that down. They can be very, very helpful with figuring out who that is that we need to have those conversations with, get them a little more secure, beef up, figure out why those things are happening. So great stuff, really cool. I highly suggest this is completely free to download and play with. Install. It did take a little bit of resources. This is by default using 4 gigs of RAM. So make sure your system can handle it. But cool stuff, gives you kind of some insights and some practical hands-on with what a host intrusion detection system can do and how it can work. But there you go. That's kind of the basics of endpoint protection. Hopefully you guys got it figured out, figuring out that we're kind of got that umbrella term. We're going to be doing antivirus, anti-malware, working through logging, and all the other great stuff. And it's going to be usually under one platform that we can centralize manage.
So a couple of things that active versus passive, that's about perspective, because I would have done the same thing you did. I'm like, nah, that sounds active.
Yeah.
But it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. How do I handle when I detect an intrusion is what determines whether it's passive or active, right?
Nailed it.
Right, so I'm either going to go, hey, stuff happened, or hey, we should probably fix that.
Yeah.
And as far as the Kibana and Elk Stack, those things can get a little out of hand. So 4 gigabytes of RAM is a good place to start, but if you had a mini logs and things like that, you may find that this requires more resources, or it's dedicated, effectively server, appliance, whatever it may be. But with that said, if you can just slurp in logs and look at them and go, hey, that's bad, it's probably worth your time and money. Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you for joining us, but we're going to go ahead and get out of here. So signing off for IT Pro TV, I've been your host, Justin Innocent.
I'm Daniel Lowry.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.